We're talking about simple reconnection strategies for ambitious but disconnected couples, because that's what happens, y'all. That's the reality of it. That's what happens.
And the thing is, when you're ambitious, and sometimes you get disconnected because you're ambitious, you're focusing on things that, like when I say impact the world, ambitious people really want to impact the world. Maybe it may be just the world of their family, maybe their communities, but doing that, sometimes you get disconnected with your spouse, And what happens is, you're busy trying to save the world, do what you got to do, whether it's building a business, working on ministry, or just really focusing on your career, and you get disconnected with your spouse. And sometimes that may fit. Sometimes that's just, but you're not prioritizing the time with your spouse. Sometimes things get busy in life and you forget to prioritize the most important person, in your life, which is your spouse, right?
Yeah.
And so with that, you get this disconnect. You're not talking as much no more. And sometimes you feel like, you feel empty. You have an empty feeling at times, because it's like when you have that opportunity, when you're moving and shaking, moving around, and then when you finally come back to your spouse, right? When you have that time to talk, it's like there's really nothing to talk about because you feel empty, because you hadn't prioritized, that time spent with each other, right?
That's a big word right there, prioritize, because sometimes we just prioritize everything else, right? How many of y'all can relate to that? Type a 1 in the chat if you can relate to prioritizing everything else, right? But when you come back home and you think about your relationship with your husband or with your wife, there's really not much there, right? Because we haven't taken that time to prioritize it. And so what we want to do instead, we don't want things to feel empty, right? We don't want things to feel, sometimes it gets to a point where it feels tense, right? It gets to a point where it feels tense. It gets to a point where it feels tight and everybody's upset. Like people are aggravated, arguments coming out of nowhere. And we're like, where is all this coming from? Like, where is this coming from? And then next thing you know, we're just avoiding each other. Why? Because we don't want any argument to come up. And y'all, this does not happen overnight. This is not something that comes up overnight. This stuff happens over time, over months, over weeks, over years. Right? And so sometimes we get to that point where we're like, I don't know what happened. I don't know where did us go within the past 3 years? We haven't prioritized us, but we're making everything else happen. Everything else looks great. But what about us?
And like you say, it happens over time because, that disconnect, you're not prioritizing that time. And it's like those little moments, it's like a snowball effect. It's a snowball effect, it's one dinner miss, then a phone call miss, then another phone call miss. The next thing you know, it's like the whole day we haven't even, sat down and actually talked to each other. And going back to, that tense situation, sometimes you can feel tense being with your spouse because y'all are so separated. You feel tense because, like, I'm trying to talk. I want to talk to my spouse, but it's tense. I feel uneasy about it because, we have this wall that we may not intentionally built up, but it happened over time.
Yeah. But that's not what we're looking for, right? We want to come home and we want to feel satisfied. We want to feel fulfilled. We want to feel peace when we come home. We want to feel peace when we get on the phone with our husband, our wife. We want to feel peace when we go to bed at night. We want to feel fulfilled. We want to feel satisfied, right? How many of you are tired of going to bed with your husband, with your wife, and feeling alone? Nobody wants that, right? That's not what anyone is looking for, okay? And so what we want is we want to feel complete. We want to feel whole. We want to feel fulfilled. We want to feel like, you know what? We can do everything else. We're making everything else happen, but we're also friends. Mm-hmm. Right? How many of you lost that friendship? You lost that friendship and you're like, man, I want that thing back. Maybe you never had one. Some people married their best friend, and that's good for them. High five to you if you married your best friend, right? We didn't marry each other as best friends. We became best friends over time. Right? Because that's something, for some of us, it's something that has to be built. And the truth is for us, we lost that. Mm-hmm. That thing we were building, it was paused for a good amount of time. Right? And so some of us just want that back. I want my friend back. I want that closeness back. I want that relationship back. I want to know what's going on inside your head, like all the time. I want to know.
And it takes work. It takes work on that. So the first thing, one of the things is prioritizing your spouse, prioritizing your relationship. And when you do that, it's like, yeah, we can focus on, doing what we got to do in business, ministry, our career, just, be ambitious and focus on what we got to focus on. But let's start carving this time out to focus specifically on us, because a lot of couples, that's why you see what we call quote unquote power couples, in the entertainment, or the entertainment business, music business, that they grow apart. They grow apart because they're so focused on their career, so focused on things they got to do, they stop prioritizing that time spent with each other. Right?
That's right.
And when you stop focusing on that, you lose that friendship. That's why some people have married their best friends, but over time it's like, I don't know you no more. I feel like I don't know you no more. Because the relationship wasn't prioritized, right? And like you said, that's one thing that we had to, work through. We didn't marry each other as best friends. We became best friends, but then, we started, you got focused on ministry. I got focused on ministry and business. You focused on business and, focused on the family and everything else we got going on. And we started drifting apart.
Yeah.
We started drifting apart.
How many of y'all have tried to talk things out? This is like the biggest thing. Everyone's like, let's sit down and talk it out.
If you try to talk it out, type talk.
Type talk in the chat.
Type talk in the chat if you try to talk it out.
Let's just have one good conversation. Let's just sit down and have one good conversation, because clearly there's something we got to talk about, right? Yes. Three, yes, right? And so talking it out is great, but there's some things that we're missing. Talking it out is important. We got to talk. We got to have a conversation. But there's something that we're missing. We're going to give you 3 things to pay attention to, right? That actually work, that will help you reconnect, that will help you get closer, because these are the things that most people are truly neglecting, right? And so the first one is, write this down. You need to trace the root. Type trace the root in the chat. Trace the root. Why? Because nothing happened overnight. If we're going to have a conversation, let's talk about where the root is. Nothing happened overnight. Things happen over days, over weeks, over months, over years. And so we try to fix the situation, but we're not getting to the root of it. And then here's the thing. Some of us have tried to get to the root before. Type a 1 in the chat if that's you. If you've tried to get to the root before, but that conversation went left, trying to get to the root. Because what we need is a system. What we need is a process. How do we get to the root? Right? So that's number 1. We got to trace the root.
And the thing is, when couples do try to chase the root, sometimes they get stuck in the past, and it gets back to that finger point and blaming. Like, okay, this is where it started from. Then it goes to the blame game, and that's why you say you actually need, you actually need a way to actually get to the root without the finger point, without the blame game, without getting stuck in the past, which so many couples do,
and without shutting down. Without shutting
down.
I'm guilty. I can talk about it all day, right? Without shutting down. How many of us shut down in the middle of conversations like that, and we walk away because we're not ready for all the emotions that are coming up. I'm not ready for your emotions, and I'm sure not ready for mine. We're not ready for nobody's emotions. So we're like, you know what? I'm just shut down and walk away because I can't handle all of this, right? And so sometimes that's how it ends, but that's number 1. And number 2 is avoidance. Avoidance. Figure out, where is this avoidance coming from? If we can't trace the root, 9 times out of 10, there's some avoidance. What does that look like? That looks like you text me and I wait very long before I text you back. That looks like you went to bed first and I'm going to go to bed way after. That looks like I pulled up to the house after work and I'm just sitting in the car. Not because I don't want to come inside, not because I don't want to see you, not because I'm upset, not because of any of that. But I'm just in this state of like, I need to get this together. I need to get this thing together. Right? And I need to figure out what's going on between us. Because we don't realize it, but avoidance sneaks right in, y'all. It sneaks right in.
So you have to ask the question, like, what is it I'm avoiding? Why am I avoiding this, right? Why am I avoiding my spouse? Why am I avoiding these conversations, right? And really start looking within yourself to get those answers. And if both of you are looking within yourself to get those answers, now it's like a way that you can actually start the process of going back to, what the first thing was there, start tracing the root. Like, why am I avoiding you? I'm avoiding coming to the house because of this situation. I feel like when I come into the house and I'm around you, your words are harsh, or there's this wall, this blockage that I feel that you're giving me. It's this energy that I feel that you're giving me. Right. So that's one way of just starting, so asking, what are we avoiding? Why are we avoiding these things?
Mm-hmm. And just to that point of energy, right? How many of us are guilty of matching our spouse's energy?
Oh, man.
Like, if they came around us and they came at a 3, how many of us are matching that 3? Like, if you didn't come in at a 10, I'm not matching you. If you came in at a 3 and you're giving me that 3 stuff, I'll match you there. Right? If you came in on a bad vibe, I'm going to stay away and I'm going to match that bad vibe, that bad energy. We're all guilty of that. Right? Yes. Me? Yes. Right? And so that's something to look at. Like, where is this thing coming from?
And if you feel like, if you could be honest with yourself and you feel like you're matching your spouse's energy, number one is awareness, right? So you're aware of that. Now you got to be accountable. You got to take accountable. Like, let me take accountable and don't match that energy. Show what other energy can you bring? So if your spouse is at a 3, come in at a 10. If you can't come in 10, come in at 7. Don't try to match your spouse's energy. Sometimes I put it like this. If your spouse is joyful, happy, that's good to match the opportunity, match the energy. But if your spouse is down, being harsh, rude, anything like that, don't match your spouse's energy, because that's not going to help the relationship. That's not going to help the environment of the household, or the environment of the relationship. Mm-hmm. It's actually going to make things worse.
Yeah.
Right. So we just got to be, honest with ourselves. If we're matching energy, let's try our best to start changing and stop matching their energy.
Yeah. And that takes a lot of self-awareness, like you said. And sometimes we are just not at that point where, sometimes, you know what it is? We are very aware. We are very aware people. Like, we're aware of ourselves. And once we're aware of something, sometimes we don't take the accountability to change that. Sometimes we don't know what it looks like to change that. Why? Because we've never had to really change and correct something within ourselves that someone else can see. Because why? Your spouse can see everything about you. Okay? He knows every there's no part of me that I can hide. Because we're together. We talk about everything. We live in the same house. We're together. You can hide parts of who you are. You can hide things of what you got going on from your boss, from your friends, from family. We can hide from other people. But when it comes to your spouse, there's not much you can hide. Right? And so we get into this state of avoidance sometimes because why? We want to hide something. We want to hide something. And it's not that we're doing nothing sneaky. It's that there's something within us that needs some work. That needs a little tweaking, needs a little bit of altering. And it's uncomfortable sometimes to do that in front of your spouse. Sometimes it's uncomfortable to do that in front of people. Right? And so if we haven't been on a 10, if our relationship hasn't been on a 10, if our friendship hasn't been on a 10, I'm not going to want to show you that I'm working on myself. Mm-hmm. Right? How many of y'all feel that? Like, you're not going to want to show your spouse that you're working on anything if your relationship isn't there, because you got to be vulnerable to fix something. You got to be vulnerable to admit something. Right? So, but that's the second point, is avoidance, and ask, what are we avoiding? Have that conversation. What are we avoiding? Right. The third one, right? I love this one because it's important. We got to pay attention to the fact that we got to change the environment. We got to change the environment. Write this down. If it's not your spouse that's going to change the environment, let it be you. Whatever that looks like. And we're not talking about moving the furniture around. We're not talking about spraying some essential oils around. No, make home feel like home. Make home feel like home. Make the relationship feel like the relationship. What does that look like? We're sitting down. Let's say he's sitting down on his phone. I'm going to get up close to him and I'm going to sit down with my phone too. Right? But I'm going to make sure that we have some physical connection. I'm going to make sure we have some physical touch. Why? Because I'm closing the gap now. I'm closing the gap. I'm removing the distance. And I'm being intentional about it and I'm confronting it. Some of us are waiting for our spouse to do all the work. We're waiting, right? We're waiting to be loved on. We're waiting to be sought after. Mm-hmm. We're waiting to be chased. We're waiting, right? I'm waiting for you to fix all the things you got to fix. And then I'll love you the way you want to be loved. I'm waiting for you to correct some things. And then I'll pour myself onto you.
And it can't be like that, because if you're waiting for your spouse to make a move, your spouse may not make that move. Your spouse may be waiting for you. So both of y'all waiting for each other. What's happening? No one's moving. So someone has to be able to, step up and change the environment of the relationship. And if it's you, just do it and have hope and faith that, you know what, I'm doing what I need to do. Right? Because I love my spouse. Because I love my spouse and because I want to move forward with my spouse. And at time, your spouse will change when they start seeing you show up. Mm-hmm. They will change when they start seeing you show up. I was speaking to a brother at one point in time, and he was doing something for his wife. And he was like, well, she wasn't reciprocating it, right? She wasn't reciprocating it. So I'm like, okay, so what'd you do? He was like, I stopped. But why'd you stop? Because she wasn't reciprocated. But is that what you were doing? Do you like doing what you were doing? Yes, I like doing what I was doing. So you like doing what you was doing, so you stopped because she wasn't reciprocating, right? You don't do that. If you like doing it, you continue doing it. And at times she will change, right? She will change and show forth, that love that you want to be seen, but you just can't stop. It's not wise for you to stop, because now she probably looking like, hold on, he was showing me all his love. He was doing this. Now he not. What's up with that? So it's best, just show up for your relationship. And sometimes that is being vulnerable and putting yourself out there. But who best to be vulnerable and put yourself out there with too than the one you love, than your spouse?
That's right. That's right. And that's one of the things too. We get so busy and we're chasing the things that we desire. And sometimes those things that we desire, they're not aligned. And we talk about this all the time. And so we're chasing them separately. We're doing our own thing separately. We're basically living separately. We're very successful. Everything is going awesome, right? We're real good at what we do, but we're living separately. And that's what it feels like, right? And so what do we have to do? We got to bring this thing full circle. We got to bring this thing in and reconnect, right? And rebuild and talk about what that's going to look like for us. Because the last 3 years don't have to repeat themselves. The last 12 months, listen, whatever your relationship looked like with the last 12 months, it don't got to repeat. It doesn't have to repeat. It can be completely different. But you have to change the environment, right? That whether that be spouse work or that be couples work together. But you got to change that environment. If you're tired of things feeling like hustle and bustle, y'all got to change that environment. How? Let's talk now. What's going on here? Right? And some of you have tried to have those conversations before. And sometimes those conversations go left. And that's where guidance comes in. Right? That's where a roadmap comes in. That's where a process comes in. Right? And so if that's the case, then that's a conversation that you need to have. Right? Because some people only need just a little bit. They just need a little tweak. And some people feel like, no, we need this thing to change. I don't want to repeat the last 6 months. I'm tired of things feeling tense. I'm tired of things feeling tight. I want a friend in my spouse. Who doesn't want that? Type friend in the chat if you want a friend out of your spouse. Someone that you can pour your soul to. Like you can pour everything out and you know they have your back. You can pour everything out and you know they are your safety vault. Right? Some of us just want a safety vault out of our spouse. That's what we're looking for. I'm looking for someone that I could pour my soul to. I can just let someone, I want to just let you all the way in. Like, I want to let you all the way in.
And I want to go all the way in.
Brother. But that makes sense, right? Yes, right? Friend in the chat. Yes, right? That's what we want out of our spouse. And so we can't neglect these three things if the relationship is feeling disconnected. Because here's the reality, right? Everything else will be going great. Business, ministry, work, career, children, the house, money coming in. Everything is going great. But because we didn't prioritize us, this is not working right now. Because we didn't prioritize us, then that's when you see a repeat of the last 12 months. They'll repeat themselves again, right? But if you get in the middle of that and say, let's talk about what are some solutions for us right now? What are some real logical solutions for us? Because we've tried X, we've tried Y, we've tried Z. So what's the solution? And so if that's a conversation that you need to have, it's time to talk about it, right? But we hope that you wrote these three things down because they're important to pay attention to. So again, number one, if you're just tuning in, is to trace the root, okay? Distance and disconnect, again, it happens over time. And so you want to talk specifically about, like, what are those things that have pulled us away from each other? What's pulled us away? That's a whole conversation in itself.
And next thing you want to, think about, what are you avoiding? Like what conversations you're avoiding, what problems or challenges you're avoiding, what kind of hard talks that y'all need to sit down and have, but y'all avoiding. And when you're doing all this avoiding, it's creating so much more tension in the relationship because it's just avoidance. It's a block. It's a wall that's between you two. So you want to talk about what are you avoiding and why are you avoiding these things?
Mm-hmm. And then the third one is to change the environment. Okay, whatever things feel like right now, if it feels tense and it feels tight, talk about that. Have that conversation. See what you can both do to change the environment. What can you both contribute? Because at the end of the day, you both contribute to the environment. So what can you both do to contribute to the change of that environment? Right? That's a big thing. The atmosphere is very important. Very important. All right, y'all. So once again, disconnect is something that happens over time, and we don't want you to continue struggling with that. We don't want you to see couples disconnected or feeling distant from each other because it doesn't feel good, right? So have these conversations and see what are some real-time solutions that you can put in place so that things do feel closer, right? So you can have a friend out of your spouse because it's possible. All right. It's completely possible. So with that, that's what we have for you all tonight. If you have a question, feel free to drop it in the comments and we'll get back to you.
And if you're watching live, comment #live. If you're watching the replay, comment #replay. We thank y'all for coming on this, I was going to say Tuesday. Thank y'all for coming on this Thursday night and sharing Marriage Talk Tuesday with us on a Thursday night. We enjoyed y'all. Once again, if you have any questions, just feel free to drop your questions in the chat and we will get back to you. With that being said, anything to say?
That's it, y'all. Peace and blessings.
Peace and blessings.